Okay, it's going to be a quick video over your test answer key. Not goes into as much detail as I did on the study guide for Chapter 9, but did want to give you all the answers that you should have with most of the work shown out. So here we go. For number 1, find the number of real solutions, which means we don't have to solve for x, just figure out how many answers there are. So we have an x squared on number 1, so we play the game of opposites. So to get rid of the 5, I would subtract 5 from both sides, which would give me -3 equals x squared. And then when we try to take the square root of -3, because that's how we get rid of the squared, you get no solution, because you cannot take the square root of a negative. So there's no answers for number 1. Number 2, we have x squareds and x's in the same problem. So when this happens, when you have them in the exact same problem, you have to get your equation equal to 0. So we make this equal to 0. We add 4 to both sides. Once we have x squared plus 4x plus 4, we would use the discriminant formula of b squared minus 4ac. So b squared would be 4 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 4, which would give me 16 minus 16, which is 0. Square root of 0, even though there's a plus minus, there's only one answer. There's no such thing as a positive 0 and a negative 0, so this is just one solution. Remember, this formula is the part from the quadratic. This is the square root part of it, which we call the discriminant. We're going to do the same thing for number 3. So we're going to go b squared minus 4ac. So b is -2, so we have -2 squared minus 4 times 3 times -30. So that's 4. And then we have -4 times 3 times 30. That's going to give us a positive 480. Well, 4 plus 480 gives you a positive answer. And if you have a positive answer, that means you're going to have two answers, because there's a plus minus in front of here. So this one has two solutions. Number 4, we're trying to find out what is this, what number can we make that to make this a perfect square trinomial. Perfect square trinomials are a squared plus 2ab plus b squared, which means the first and last term are perfect squares, and then the middle term are their square roots doubled. So if I got the middle term, to get the last term, we know is called completing the square, which means it's b over 2 squared. So your b value is 14, so 14 over 2 squared, which gives you 49. So 49 is your answer. Same thing on 5, except we have a odd number, so we're not going to get a nice number when we're done. We're going to get a fraction, so we take half of the middle, so -7 over 2, take half of it, now we square it. That gives us 49 over 4. 49 over 4 is our perfect square trinomial. Now we're going to solve these by completing the square. So we're going to do what we were just doing a second ago, but now we're actually going to complete the square and keep solving further. So for 6 to complete the square, I need to take half of the middle. So we're going to take 12, divide it by 2, and we're going to square it. That's going to give us a 36. So we're going to put a 36 on the left and the right. So x squared plus 12x plus 36 equals 9 plus 36. Because I put a 36 on the left, I have to put one on the right as well. So now the whole point of completing the square so that we can factor it when we're done. And so to factor this one, this will focus. There we go. To factor it, we can use a diamond, or the shortcut is you just take the square roots. So square root of x squared is x, square root of 36 is 6, so x plus 6 squared is equal to 9 plus 36, which is 45. Now we're going to solve, so I'm going to take the square root of both sides. X plus 6 equals plus minus root 45. Subtract 6 from both sides, and I get -6 plus minus root 45. 45 can be broken down further, though, because it's a square root. I can make 45 into square root 9 times square root 5. 9 square root is 3, so it's 3 root 5. So the full final answer is -6 plus minus 3 root 5. Number 7, got to get that 10 to the other side so I can complete the square. Now the problem is we've got a 6 in front, so we have to factor that out. So it's going to be 6 parentheses a squared plus 6a equals 10. So we take half of the middle, so we take half of 6, which is 3. 3 squared is 9, so each side's going to get a 9. But not too fast, because this over here gets a 9, but it's not really a full 9, because this 9 is really worth a total of 54, because 6 times your 9 is 54, so we put a 54 over on this side. Now we factor, so 6a plus 3 squared is equal to 64. We're going to divide both sides by 6, so a plus 3 squared is equal to 64 over 6. A plus 3 squared. We can take 64 and 6, and we can divide both of those by 2 to get 32 over 3. Now we're going to take the square root. So I'm going to have a plus 3 equals plus minus root 32 over 3. Subtract 3, negative 3 plus minus root 32 over 3. And if you got to that far, you got most of your credit. However, we can go further with that. We can rationalize that denominator. So again, rationalizing the denominator. If you have root 32 over square root 3, rationalizing denominator means you're not allowed to have a square root on the bottom. So we always multiply by its square root. What we do to the bottom, we have to do to the top. So 3 times 3 is 9. 32 times 3 gives us our 96. Square root of 9 is 3. Square root of 96 is not a perfect square. So then we look to see if any perfect squares will go into 96. And 16 will, because I can do 16 times 6 to give me 96. And the square root of 16 is 4. So this is really 4 root 6. So this is 4 root 6 over 3. That's what this simplifies to. So we change our answer to negative 3 plus minus, what was it? 4 root 6 over 3. And that would be for full credit. All right. On to number 8, putting things into vertex form. Vertex form, all you have to do is complete the square. Simple as that. So to complete the square, we move that 32 over to the other side, because we need to put our own number there. Take half of the middle, so half of 18 is 9. Square the 9 gives you an 81. So that means we put an 81 on the other side as well. So now I have f of x plus 113 equals...
In 1 minute, we will dismiss the 7th graders that are going to Reader's Beach, the 7th graders with wristbands only. Just a reminder, when we go to B7, which starts our lunch period, 6th graders will keep their normal lunch time, but 8th graders will have second lunch today. Also, we need all substitute teachers available 7th period to call 101 or report to the main office.
So what I did
Please send to Kayla Garman, Kendall Blue, main office.
So what we did over here is once we completed the square, I factored it to x minus 9 squared. This 113 needed to get moved back over, so that's a minus 113, and that's your final vertex form. Then for number 9, start completing the square by putting the 2 to the other side. Take half of the middle, so that's 5 halves squared, it's just 25 fourths. So I put plus 25 fourths, put it on the other side as well. So this becomes y plus 25 fourths is 6 1/4. So 2 and 6 1/4 make 8 1/4. So that's pretty easy as a mixed number. To factor, it might look hard, but remember the trick is you just take the square roots for perfect square trinomials. So this is x, the square root of 25 fourths is 5 halves. Don't forget your squared. So y equals x plus 5 halves squared minus 8 1/4. Now on to number 10, where we had to start solving for the variables. This is our zero product property. The first parentheses times the second parentheses is 0. So either our first parentheses, which is 3x minus 7, was 0, or our second parentheses, which was x plus 1, was 0. So it had to be one or the other. So since we don't know which one, we got to solve for both cases. So we just solve. So we're going to add 7 to both sides, divide by 3. Now on the other one, we're just going to subtract 1 from both sides. And so we get 7/3 and -1 as our final answers. Here we have x squareds and x's in the same problem, so we have to make it equal to 0. So subtract 10x, add 5 to both sides. From here, this can't be factored, so we could do the quadratic formula, or we can do completing the square. I'm going to complete the square. So I'm going to move that 5 back to the other side. Take half of my middle term, so half of 10 is 5. Square it, it's 25. Let's put a plus 25 on the other side. Factor. Be careful here, this is a minus 10x. You have to put a minus 5 when you do the factoring. Now we take the square roots. Don't forget your plus minus. Now we add 5 to both sides. That's almost the right answer, but 20, we can reduce that. Square root 20, I could break that into square root 4 times the square root of 5, because 4 times 5 gives you the 20. But the square root of 4 is 2, so now it's a simpler square root. So x equals 5 plus minus 2 root 5. Number 12, we have x squareds and x's, so we got to make the equation equal to 0. So let's add 7x to this side on the left. But when you add a 7x to a negative 7x, they cancel out. So now you're left with x squared equals 100. So all you have to simply do is take the square roots. And you get plus minus 10. 13. We look at this, and we could complete the square, but that would be some nasty fractions that probably you don't want to deal with. So let's just make this equal to 0 and then use our quadratic formula. So 6 squared plus 11x minus 10 is equal to 0. So here we go, negative b, so negative 11 plus minus square root b squared, which is 11 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 6, times c, which is negative 10, over 2a, which is 2 times 6. So now let's deal with the discriminant part first. 11 squared gives us 121. 4 times 6 times negative 4 times 6 times negative 10 is 240. And 121 plus 240 gives us 361. So now we have negative 11 plus minus square root 361 all over 12. Which, if you got to that point, you got most of your points. However, square root of 361 is 19. So this is really negative 11 plus minus 19 over 12. So you have negative 11 plus 19 divided by 12, and negative 11 minus 19 divided by 12. Negative 11 plus 19 gives you an 8. Over 12, which gives you 2/3, and negative 11 minus 19 over 12 gives you your negative 30 over 12, which we can reduce to, let's see, 3 will go into both of these, which would be negative 10/4. 2 goes into both, which would give you a negative 5/2. So 2/3 and negative 5/2 would be your answer for 13. Let me focus in on that so that way you can pause it if you need to look at all the work. Didn't realize when it went out of focus. Okay, then on to number 14. X squared only, so game of opposites. We're going to add 25 to both sides, divide both sides by 4. We get 25/4, take the square root. Well, square root of 25 is 5, the square root of 4 is 2, and don't forget your plus minus sign.